Marcus froze as Victoria Chen, CEO of Horizon Technologies and one of the wealthiest women in the country, walked past him in the office hallway without a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Just 12 hours earlier, he'd pulled her unconscious body from her crashed Lamborghini seconds before it erupted in flames, risking his own life while his 6-year-old daughter waited in his car. The woman whose life he'd saved. His boss, who had drunkenly sobbed on his shoulder about her loneliness at the top, now acted as if he didn't exist. "Mr. Reynolds, my office. Now." Victoria's voice cut through the air without warmth, addressing him like any other employee. Marcus felt his heart sink as he followed her, wondering if he'd imagined the connection they'd shared in those raw moments by the roadside. His daughter Lily depended entirely on him since her mother's death, and he desperately needed this job. Had Victoria forgotten everything, or worse, was she deliberately pretending nothing happened to protect her reputation? The whispers around the office suggested she'd been at a charity gala before the accident, but no news of the crash had surfaced. Someone had made sure of that. Victoria closed her office door with a decisive click. "I understand you were present at an incident last night." Her voice was cold, clinical. "I need to know exactly what you saw, what you did, and who you've told." Marcus stared at her in disbelief. This wasn't gratitude, this was damage control. The woman who had clung to him, vulnerable and grateful as he carried her away from danger, was now treating him like a potential liability. What had happened to change her so completely overnight? The weeks that followed were a strange dance of avoidance and tension. Marcus kept his head down, focusing on his work in the IT department while raising Lily alone in their small apartment. He never mentioned the accident to anyone, though the weight of the secret and Victoria's coldness ate at him. His co-workers noticed the CEO's unusual frostiness toward him. Previously she'd barely acknowledged his existence, but now there seemed to be active hostility. Rumors spread that he was on the chopping block for the upcoming layoffs, and Marcus began quietly applying for other jobs. He couldn't afford to lose this one. Not with Lily's medical bills still piling up from her asthma treatments. One evening, working late to finish a critical system update, Marcus was startled when Victoria appeared in the doorway of the server room. "Still here?" she asked, her voice softer than he'd heard it since that night. He nodded, noticing her slightly disheveled appearance and the faint smell of whiskey. "Walk with me," she commanded, though it sounded more like a request this time. Against his better judgment, Marcus followed her to the executive elevator that led to the rooftop garden, a space normally off-limits to regular employees. "I remember everything about that night," Victoria said abruptly as they stood overlooking the city lights. "I remember the crash. I remember you pulling me out. I remember." She paused, crying about things I've never told anyone. Marcus remained silent, unsure where this was heading. "What I don't understand," she continued, "is why you didn't sell the story to the press. One photo of me drunk and crashed would have been worth 6 months of your salary." The question hung between them, her eyes searching his face for answers. "Because Lily was watching," Marcus replied simply. "My daughter was in my car. I pulled over to help because that's what decent people do. And I didn't take photos or call reporters because that's not the example I want to set for her." He met Victoria's gaze steadily. "Not everything has a price tag, Miss Chen." Something shifted in Victoria's expression, surprise, perhaps even respect. "Your daughter, she's the one in the photo on your desk. With the inhaler?" Marcus nodded, wondering why the CEO of a billion-dollar company would notice such a detail. Victoria turned away, looking out at the skyline. "My father died of respiratory failure when I was 8. No money for proper treatment." The admission seemed to surprise even her. "I built this company from nothing because I never wanted to feel that helpless again." Before Marcus could respond, Victoria's phone rang. Her face transformed as she answered, the momentary vulnerability vanishing behind her CEO mask. "I have to take this. We'll continue this discussion another time," she said briskly, already walking away. Marcus stood alone on the rooftop, more confused than ever about the enigmatic woman who signed his paychecks, and who owed him her life. The next morning, Marcus received an email transferring him to a special project team reporting directly to the CEO. His salary had been doubled, with a note that the position required absolute discretion. His co-workers looked at him with new curiosity and envy, whispering theories about his sudden promotion. Marcus himself wasn't sure what to make of it. Was this a genuine opportunity, or was Victoria simply keeping him close to ensure his silence? The special project turned out to be developing a new healthcare platform that would make treatments more accessible to low-income families. Marcus threw himself into the work, impressed by the vision despite his lingering wariness about Victoria's intentions. They worked closely together, often late into evenings, and he began to see glimpses of the woman he'd briefly encountered the night of the accident, brilliant, driven, but carrying deep wounds beneath her polished exterior. "Daddy, is Ms. Victoria your girlfriend now?" Lily asked one night after Victoria had unexpectedly dropped by their apartment with soup when she heard Lily was having an asthma flare-up. Marcus nearly choked on his water. "No, sweetheart. She's my boss." Lily looked unconvinced. "But she looks at you like Mommy used to look at you in the old videos." Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought, though he dismissed the idea. Victoria Chen moved in circles far above his. Whatever their connection, romance wasn't part of the equation. 3 months into the healthcare project, disaster struck. A rival company announced an almost identical platform, beating them to market by weeks. Victoria was livid, convinced someone on the team had leaked their plans. In a tense meeting, her suspicion fell heavily on Marcus, the newest member with the most mysterious promotion. "Perhaps this explains your reluctance to capitalize on our first encounter," she said coldly. "You were playing a longer game." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face as his colleagues stared at him. "I would never betray this project," he said quietly. "I believe in what we're doing here." But Victoria's expression remained stony as she dismissed the meeting, instructing IT security to revoke Marcus's access to the project files pending investigation. He walked out of the building that evening feeling the weight of accusation on his shoulders, wondering how he would explain to Lily that he might be unemployed again, and this time with a potential lawsuit hanging over his head. That night, unable to sleep, Marcus reviewed everything he knew about the project and the leak. Something didn't add up. The rival company's platform had features they'd only discussed in private meetings between him and Victoria, meetings no one else had attended. Driven by both self-preservation and genuine concern for the project he'd come to believe in, Marcus did something he'd never done before. He hacked into Victoria's corporate email. What he found left him breathless. Victoria herself had been sending project details to an external email address. But as he dug deeper, Marcus realized the truth was even more complicated. The email belonged to Victoria's younger sister, who worked for the rival company, and who appeared to be blackmailing Victoria with something from their past. The final piece clicked when he found medical records attached to one exchange. Victoria's sister needed an experimental treatment not covered by insurance, and the rival company's CEO had promised to fund it if Victoria sabotaged her own project. Marcus sat back, stunned by the revelation. Victoria Chen, the ruthless billionaire, was sacrificing her company's breakthrough to save her sister's life, and was willing to let Marcus take the fall to protect her secret. The woman who had seemed so cold and calculating was actually making perhaps the most selfless choice of all, though in the most destructive way possible. Dawn was breaking when Marcus made his decision. He gathered all the evidence, wrote a detailed explanation, and drove to Victoria's penthouse. The security guard, recognizing him from late work nights, let him up without question. When Victoria opened her door, still in silk pajamas with dark circles under her eyes, she looked both surprised and resigned to see him. "I know about your sister," Marcus said simply, holding out the folder of documents. "And I think I have a better solution than both of us losing everything." Victoria's face went through a rapid succession of emotions: shock, anger, fear, and finally, a fragile hope. "Come in," she said, opening the door wider. "It seems we have a lot to discuss." The solution Marcus proposed was audacious. They would publicly announce a partnership with the rival company, combining their technologies while ensuring Victoria's sister got the treatment she needed. It would require Victoria to swallow her pride and Marcus to risk his career on her trustworthiness, but it could save both the project and her sister. After hours of discussion, Victoria made the call to the rival CEO, with Marcus by her side providing moral support and technical details. 2 weeks later, the partnership was announced to industry acclaim, with both companies' stock prices soaring. Victoria's sister began her treatment, with cautiously optimistic prognosis. And Marcus found himself in the unexpected position of being named co-director of the expanded healthcare initiative, with a corner office and a salary that meant Lily would never have to worry about medical bills again. "You could have destroyed me," Victoria said quietly one evening as they worked late in her office. "Why didn't you?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "For the same reason I pulled you from that car, I suppose. Some things matter more than winning or losing." He hesitated, then added, "And I think you're worth saving, Victoria Chen." Both times. Something shifted between them in that moment, a barrier falling away, a truth acknowledged. Victoria moved around her desk and, for the first time since the night of the accident, touched him voluntarily, her hand resting lightly on his. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered. "Not the CEO, not the billionaire. Just me." 6 months later, at the launch gala for their now successful healthcare platform, Victoria surprised everyone by publicly acknowledging Marcus's role in both the project and her life. "Some heroes don't wear capes," she told the assembled crowd of industry elites. "Sometimes they drive beat-up Hondas and stop to help strangers on dark roads. And sometimes, they teach billionaires that the most valuable things in life can't be bought or sold." Later that evening, as they shared a quiet dance away from the crowds, Victoria leaned close to Marcus's ear. "Lily asked me an interesting question yesterday when I was helping her with her science project," she murmured. "She wanted to know if I was going to be her new mommy." Marcus missed a step, nearly tripping over his own feet. Victoria laughed, a genuine, joyful sound he'd come to treasure. "I told her that was entirely up to her daddy, but that nothing would make me happier." Under the sparkling lights of the gala, surrounded by the success they'd built together, Marcus realized that sometimes the most unexpected rescues go both ways. He had pulled Victoria from a burning car, but she had pulled him from a life of quiet struggle and shown him he was capable of more than he'd ever imagined. And somewhere along the way, they'd both discovered that the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the courage to be vulnerable with another person. "If you enjoyed this journey of unexpected connection and second chances," Victoria said in her closing speech that night, with a meaningful glance at Marcus, "remember that the most powerful stories are often the ones where we take a risk on someone who seems different from us. Sometimes saving someone else is how we save ourselves." As the audience applauded, Marcus thought about how a single moment of decision on a dark road had changed everything. Like this story had changed you, perhaps? If it touched your heart, consider sharing it with others who might need a reminder that heroes come in all forms, and that sometimes the people who seem to have everything are the ones most in need of being truly seen. Transition from colleagues to something more wasn't without its challenges. Victoria's board members raised eyebrows at her growing closeness with an employee who had seemingly appeared from nowhere in the executive ranks. Marcus faced resentment from co-workers who assumed he'd slept his way to the top, unaware of the life-altering night that had first connected them. And Lily, though fond of Victoria, sometimes grew quiet when the businesswoman's presence in their lives became more constant, clutching her mother's photo tighter at bedtime. "She's afraid I'm trying to replace her mom," Victoria confessed one evening as she and Marcus sat on his small balcony after Lily had gone to bed. She twisted her wine glass nervously, a far cry from the confident CEO who commanded boardrooms. "I would never want to do that. Your late wife will always be Lily's mother." Marcus reached for her hand, still surprised by how natural it felt now. "Sarah would have liked you," he said softly. "She always said life was too short for people to hide their true selves. It took me losing her to understand what she meant." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only when Victoria spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "The night of the accident, I was driving so recklessly because I just found out about my sister's diagnosis. The doctors had given her months, not years." She looked up at the stars, blinking rapidly. "I've spent my whole life building walls to protect myself from feeling helpless like I did when my father died. And then in one day, I nearly lost everything that mattered because I couldn't face that feeling again." Marcus remembered the broken woman he'd held that night, so different from the polished executive the world knew. "Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is admit when we're not strong," he said. "That's what I had to learn after Sarah died, for Lily's sake." The next morning brought an unexpected crisis. Victoria arrived at Marcus's apartment ashen-faced, clutching her phone. "Someone leaked photos," she said without preamble. "From the accident. They're all over the business news sites." Marcus quickly pulled up the stories on his laptop. Grainy but unmistakable images of Victoria being carried from the wreckage by Marcus, her face streaked with tears and blood, his daughter visible in the background. The headlines were brutal: "Chen's drunken crash," "Employee saves billionaire boss," and "Romance or blackmail?" The secret relationship behind Horizon's new direction. "They're saying I promoted you because you had leverage over me," Victoria said, her voice hollow. "The board is calling an emergency meeting. Our stock is already down 12%. She looked at him with devastation in her eyes. "Everything we've built could collapse because of this." Marcus felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. Who would have taken these? There was no one else on that road. Then realization dawned. The tow truck driver. "He arrived just as I was getting you away from the car." Victoria nodded grimly, already on her phone arranging damage control. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind. Victoria faced the board while Marcus was grilled by HR. Reporters camped outside both their homes, forcing Marcus to send Lily to stay with his parents. The healthcare project they'd poured their hearts into was suddenly under scrutiny, with partners questioning its viability amid the scandal. "They want me to distance myself from you publicly," Victoria told him during a stolen moment in a service stairwell at the office. "The PR team thinks it's the only way to stabilize things." Her eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "They want me to suggest you took advantage of the situation for career advancement." Marcus felt as though he'd been punched. "And what do you want?" he asked quietly. Victoria's professional mask cracked, revealing the vulnerability beneath. "I want to tell the truth. That you saved my life. That you saved me again when you found out about my sister. That you're the most honorable person I've ever met." She took a shaky breath. "But I'm afraid of losing everything I've built. Not for myself, but for what the healthcare platform can do for families like yours, for children like Lily." Marcus understood the impossible choice before her. "Then do what you need to do," he said, though the words cost him dearly. "The project matters more than my reputation." The press conference was scheduled for the following morning. Marcus watched from his apartment as Victoria approached the podium, immaculate in a steel-gray suit that matched the determination in her eyes. He braced himself for the professional betrayal they had reluctantly agreed was necessary. "6 months ago," Victoria began, her voice steady, "I made the worst mistake of my life. I got behind the wheel after drinking, putting myself and others at risk." The room fell silent as reporters leaned forward. "That night, an employee of mine, Marcus Reynolds, happened upon the scene of my accident and saved my life at risk to his own." Marcus sat up straighter, confusion replacing resignation. This wasn't the script they'd discussed. What followed was not, as some have suggested, a case of blackmail or improper relationship, Victoria continued. "Mr. Reynolds never spoke of the incident to anyone. He never asked for recognition or reward. In fact, when I initially pretended not to remember what happened, he accepted it without complaint and continued his exemplary work. The cameras flashed as Victoria paused, seeming to gather herself. I promoted Marcus Reynolds because of his exceptional talent and integrity, qualities that became even more apparent after our shared experience. The healthcare platform we've developed together was born from our mutual understanding of what truly matters in life. Not wealth or status, but compassion and connection. She looked directly into the camera then, as if she could see Marcus watching. I stand before you today not just as the CEO of Horizon Technologies, but as a human being who made a terrible mistake and was fortunate enough to be saved by someone who valued my life over potential personal gain. If there's any scandal here, it's that it took me nearly losing everything to recognize what truly matters. Marcus sat stunned as his phone began ringing incessantly, colleagues, friends, even his parents calling to express their amazement at Victoria's public declaration. But it was the text message from Victoria herself that brought tears to his eyes. I choose truth. I choose us. Whatever comes next, we face it together. The fallout was immediate and intense. Horizon stock fluctuated wildly as the market processed Victoria's unprecedented candor. Some board members called for her resignation, while others praised her courage. The rival company tried to leverage the chaos to back out of their partnership, threatening the treatment for Victoria's sister. Through it all, Marcus and Victoria stood firm, working tirelessly to stabilize the company and save the healthcare project. They gave joint interviews explaining their vision, invited transparency into their development process, and even arranged for families who would benefit from the platform to share their stories. 3 months after the scandal broke, something remarkable happened. A major health insurance provider announced they would fully integrate with the platform, citing its potential to revolutionize care for chronic conditions. Other partners followed, and gradually, Horizon stock not only recovered but reached new heights. People respond to authenticity, Marcus observed as they celebrated the insurance partnership with a quiet dinner at his apartment, Lily happily drawing pictures for Victoria at the coffee table. When you chose truth over image, you gave the company something more valuable than perfect PR. Victoria watched Lily with a soft expression. I learned that from you. And from her. She lowered her voice. Her latest lung function tests showed improvement. The new treatment protocol we developed is working. Marcus felt a surge of emotion. The platform they'd created was already changing lives, including his daughter's. Worth every moment of scandal, then, he said with a smile. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Victoria led Marcus to the balcony where they had shared so many important conversations. To his surprise, she seemed nervous, fidgeting with something in her pocket. I've been thinking about what true wealth means, she said, looking out at the city lights. Before the accident, I measured it in dollars and market share. Then I thought it was about doing good through the company. She turned to face him. But now I know it's this, finding someone who sees you at your worst and still believes in your best. She took his hand, pressing something small and cool into his palm. Marcus looked down to find a simple key. What's this? He asked. A key to a cabin by the lake, Victoria explained. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place where a family could spend weekends away from the city. Where a little girl with asthma could breathe clean air. Her eyes shone with uncharacteristic uncertainty. Where perhaps, someday, if you both wanted, we could be a family. It wasn't a traditional proposal, but then nothing about their journey had been traditional. Marcus closed his fingers around the key, understanding all it represented, not just a property, but a future, a commitment, a new chapter. Lily asked me something interesting yesterday, he said, echoing Victoria's words from months earlier. She wanted to know if we could teach you to fish, like I used to do with her mom. He smiled at Victoria's surprised expression. I told her that would be entirely up to you, but that nothing would make us happier. As they stood together under the night sky, Marcus reflected on how life's most important turns often come when we least expect them. A dark road, a crashed car, a moment of decision, and now here they were, building something neither could have imagined that night. Not just a successful company or a groundbreaking healthcare platform, but a family forged through crisis, strengthened by truth, and bound together by the courage to be vulnerable. In the end, the forgotten hero had been remembered in the way that mattered most, not through public accolades or professional advancement, but through the lasting impact of a single act of kindness that had changed not just one life, but countless others through the ripples it created. And perhaps that was the greatest wealth of all.